911 emergency.
Hi, I need help.
Hello?
I need help.
Okay, where are you located? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Are you able to tell me where you're located?
No.
Are you at a...
553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast. Please hurry now.
Okay, I got Sheldon. What's the number?
553. Hurry, please hurry up.
553 Sheldon. Okay, can you tell me what's going on there?
Can you just hurry up, please? I'm gonna use this meeting. You don't mind anything. You need to hurry up, please.
Okay, ma'am, I'll start the police that way. Can you tell me what your name is?
Kiana.
The voice you're hearing in whispers, desperate for help? That was 25-year-old Kiana Griffin, terrified, breathless, and just moments from her own death. She had just witnessed a kind of horror no one expected. But the most disturbing part? It came from someone very familiar, someone they had welcomed with open arms. At around 12 noon in Grand Rapids, police received another chilling 911 call, but now from another person. Moments later, officers arrived at 553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast to uncover a scene that would haunt them forever. Kiana was found dead with multiple bullet wounds to her chest and face, lying in a pool of her own blood. What investigators didn't know was that another grim scene was waiting for them just doors away. As police scrambled for answers, they uncovered a devastating truth. The one behind it all was her aunt's boyfriend. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The horrors were far from over. This is the life and death of Kiana Griffin.
In East Grand Rapids, Forest Hills, or, some other affluent area, they would have came with the whole cavalry. The house would have been surrounded, and they wouldn't have left until the owner came or till they found out who was in that home.
25-year-old Kiana Griffin was born in the early months of 1994 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a city with quiet streets, resilient neighborhoods, and strong family ties. From the moment she entered the world, her family knew she was something special. As she grew, Kiana became a warm, vibrant spirit and had an undeniable strength about her. By the time she was a teenager, Kiana had already stepped into the role of protector for her siblings. She was the kind of big sister who helped with homework and comforted with words far beyond her years. Friends and family remember Kiana as a young woman with endless potential. She had a deep sense of empathy, always looking out for those around her, often placing others' needs ahead of her own. She dreamed of building a better life for herself and her loved ones, talking often about returning to school, traveling, and eventually starting her own business. After graduating from Grand Rapids public schools, Kiana worked part-time at a local cafe while studying early childhood education with dreams of helping children in her community. She was single but deeply involved in community events, youth mentoring, and church initiatives. But above all, she stayed closest to the woman who helped raise her. Her bond with her family was unshakable, especially with her aunt Charlotta Baber Bay. While some people have a second parent in name only, Kiana truly lived that connection. Charlotta wasn't just her aunt, she was her guiding light, her second mother, and her best friend. She lived in a modest home on Sheldon Avenue Southeast with her Aunt Charlotta and her grandmother, 65-year-old Jacqueline Baber Bay, a setup that felt more like a quiet refuge than anything else. Despite life's challenges, Kiana remained focused and hopeful, a presence that brought calm to those around her, and much of that strength mirrored the woman she lived with. 47-year-old Charlotta Baber Bay, born in 1971, was a pillar of support in her family and her neighborhood. Charlotta worked in retail management and volunteered at her church, including mentoring single mothers. But as fate would have it, the bond that made Kiana and Charlotta inseparable would ultimately be the thread tied to a horrifying tragedy. On the morning of March 13, 2019, Kiana Griffin made a heart-wrenching 911 call.
"911 emergency."
Hi, I need help.
Hello?
I need help.
Okay, where are you located? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Are you able to tell me where you're located?
No.
Are you at a...
553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast. Please hurry now.
Okay, I got Sheldon. What's the number?
553. Hurry, please hurry up.
553 Sheldon. Okay, can you tell me what's going on there?
Can you just hurry up, please? I'm gonna use this meeting. You don't mind anything. You need to hurry up, please.
Okay, ma'am, I'll start the police that way. Can you tell me what your name is?
Kiana.
Her voice was trembling. It was clear she was hiding. In that brief, chaotic call, Kiana whispered something no one expected to hear. Someone had killed her aunt, and she believed she was next. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Earlier that same day, Kiana's grandmother, Jacqueline Baber Bay, had left the home around 8 a.m. According to her, both Charlotta and Kiana were safe and acting normally. Nothing seemed out of place. But during that narrow window of time while Jacqueline was away, everything changed. Kiana had seen something so horrifying that she knew she might not survive long enough to explain it. When Kiana moved into the family home, she thought she was just joining her aunt and grandmother in a quiet, loving household. What she didn't anticipate was the presence of a fourth person. That person was 45-year-old Darrell Brown. Not just a house guest, but a shadow figure who blended into the background. He had no social footprint, no job, no obligations. From the outside, he was nearly invisible. Darrell, who went simply as Jay, was a complete mystery. His presence defined more by what they didn't know than what they did. The only information they had came from what Charlotta shared, which wasn't much. She said they met at a public library where they quickly formed a close, intimate bond. She fell for him hard. From the outside, Jay seemed like the perfect match for Charlotta. Quiet, soft-spoken, introverted, just like her. The family knew only his first name and that his only run-in with the law was jail time related to unpaid child support. Her family supported the relationship even though the couple mostly kept to themselves in her upstairs bedroom. Jay didn't cause any trouble, and despite being elusive and oddly private, he seemed calm, harmless even. They were just happy that she had finally found companionship, but not everyone was convinced. Kiana always had her doubts. To others, Jay may have seemed like a quiet loner, but to her, something felt off. She was close enough to her aunt to see the contrast. While Charlotta's silence came from warmth and humility, Jay's seemed darker, brooding, even sinister. It was an energy Kiana couldn't ignore. Still, she didn't want to be the one to bring down her aunt's happiness. Instead of voicing her concern, she quietly began planning her move out of the house. But before she could follow through, something happened that would change everything. Kiana had witnessed Jay murder her aunt. It was cold, deliberate, and without remorse. Horrified and fearing for her life, Kiana went into hiding in the home and managed to make a frantic 911 call at just before 10:30 a.m. She begged for help, trying to stay hidden before Jay could find her. Around 10:45, 3 police officers arrived at 553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast. An officer knocked on the front door, but no one answered. He tried the doorknob, but it was locked. Still, they didn't give up. They asked dispatch to try calling the woman back, but no one picked up. Given the panic in her voice, this wasn't unexpected. Kiana had barely managed to make the first call. One officer circled the house trying the side door. It too was locked. He peered through a window and saw only an empty dining room. Another officer checked the backyard and returned empty-handed. With no response, no sign of forced entry, and no visible distress, the officers began to wonder, was this something else entirely? The officers began to entertain another possibility. They radioed in a code 1096, police shorthand for a situation potentially involving mental illness.
1878, can you try a call back?
1878, there was no answer.
We're trying to side door. Over there. Seems like it's empty.
You can see it. It looks like a little dining room or something in there. It's empty.
There's nothing in the back here.
In their eyes, the 911 call might have been a false alarm from someone in distress or delusional. They circled the house one final time and knocked again at the front door. Still, no one answered. So after 3 minutes on the scene, with no visible signs of distress, the officers made the fateful decision to leave. But their departure wouldn't mark the end of the police's involvement with this address, not even for the day, because not long after, a second call would send them racing back. At around 12 noon, barely 2 hours later, another call came in from the same home. This time, it was from Kiana's brother, Sanford Cummings II. Sanford had stopped by the house after work expecting a normal visit. Instead, he walked into a nightmare that would haunt him for life.
I need you to tell me if she's breathing. Watch her chest. I don't know. Is it rising?
She had been shot at least 4 times, once in the face.
Oh, my Lord, please, my son.
In another bedroom, police found Kiana's aunt lying under a blanket, an iPad still playing, propped up by a pillow beside her. Under the bed, police discovered a blood-stained roll of duct tape. Sherlita Baber-Bay had been shot in the back of the head. The 2 women lived at the home with its owner, Jacqueline Baber-Bay, who would later die in the house fire, and Sherlita's live-in boyfriend, unaccounted for after the murders.
Inside, he found his sister Kiana on the floor, naked and lying in a pool of her own blood. He later told authorities that it appeared her hands had been broken and that she had been stabbed. But that wasn't all. What investigators uncovered next painted a much darker picture. When officers returned to the house, they entered a scene of horror. Kiana lay near the living room doorway, motionless. She had been shot multiple times. Forensic examiners later confirmed that she had sustained gunshot wounds to both her chest and face. The brutality was unmistakable. Kiana had put up a fight. But the horrors did not stop there. As investigators made their way through the house, they discovered 45-year-old Sherlita Baber-Bay in her bedroom. Unlike Kiana, she appeared completely unaware of the attack. She was still in bed, lying on her side as though she'd simply been relaxing. A single gunshot wound to the back of her head told a chilling story. She had been executed in her sleep or while resting. She likely never saw it coming. Next to her on the bed, an iPad sat propped up on a pillow, still playing. Earbuds were still tucked in her ears, untouched. Whatever she had been watching was likely the last thing she ever saw. But one chilling discovery stood out. As officers secured the home, it began piecing together the crime scene. They found a high-point 9mm handgun lying on the floor, surrounded by scattered shell casings. The serial number had been deliberately filed off, an unmistakable attempt to make the weapon untraceable. Kiana had tried to flee, that much was clear from the scene. But in this house, there had been nowhere safe to run. Jacqueline was notified immediately. When told that both her daughter Sherlita and her granddaughter Kiana were dead, she was devastated. But another question quickly followed. Where was Darrell? If 2 of the home's occupants were confirmed deceased and Darrell was unaccounted for, had he also become a victim? Or had something far more sinister happened? The Grand Rapids Police Department's Crime Response Unit moved swiftly. They sealed off the residence, and forensic teams began their painstaking work, dusting for prints, photographing evidence, and cataloging damage. Every surface, every wall, every door frame was examined. But then, a single clue brought the case into sharp focus. Footage recovered from the home's security system showed a hooded figure slipping out of the house. Early that morning, when witnesses and neighbors were shown the image, several identified the man as Darrell Damon Brown and Sherlita's boyfriend. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces began to align.
Now to breaking news in Grand Rapids, a suspicious investigation, now a double homicide, as Grand Rapids police continue to search for a suspect.
A man police say who lived with the victims. Their bodies found in a home on Sheldon. GRPD confirmed in just the last hour Darrell Brown lived with Sherlita Baber-Bay and Kiana Griffin.
24 Hour News 8's Lindsay McComel is outside of Grand Rapids Police Headquarters with the breaking turn in this investigation and the person of interest's checkered past. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A big turn in this, still named as a person of interest, but we do know that he was dating Baber Bay, and no one has heard from him since someone discovered the victims' bodies yesterday. We learned that they were shot to death, so they now are trying to urgently find Brown. We've also learned that he has a violent criminal history. In 2006, he was charged with assault. A year before that, in 2005, I uncovered a disturbing case with allegations that a former live-in girlfriend made in court. And I do want to warn you that the details of this case are disturbing. Now, that was in 2005. As I mentioned, his then girlfriend testified that he bound and beat her. The transcript shows the woman said that Brown tied her up with cords, kicked her in the face, gagged her so she could not scream, then urinated on her and doused her in lighter fluid, all while her 3 children and the child that she has with Brown were upstairs sleeping. Now, it was also at that time that she had said on the stand that she did not want to see him go to prison because she believed that he needed help. That case was a felony kidnapping case. She had testified during his preliminary hearing for that case. A judge had ruled there was enough evidence to have that case go to trial. However, he ended up in a plea agreement. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor domestic violence in that case. We have not been able to tie together the other outcomes of his cases from 2006, but we also know from police that he has several aliases. So I asked Sergeant Kathy Williams about that.
That definitely makes the investigation more difficult. Not only are we searching all of our databases for someone, but we're having to search by 4, 5, 6, 7 names. And those are only the ones that we know about. If someone is frequently using aliases, there may be others out there that we don't even know about yet. So certainly that does make the investigation more difficult.
Police now had a name, a face, and a clear direction. Calls went out across the state. Michigan State Police were alerted. The U.S. Marshals were brought into the case, and within hours, Darrell Brown was no longer just a missing person. He was the prime suspect. Meanwhile, forensic analysts were hard at work running ballistics and fingerprinting the recovered handgun. Though the serial number had been removed, investigators had another way in. Pawn shop records and police fingerprint databases. Their gamble paid off. The weapon had been reported stolen and was connected to Darrell through a match on fingerprints. But that wasn't all. Investigators now understood that Darrell hadn't been a casual guest in the house. He'd essentially been living there. While he had no official lease or documentation, he stayed often enough to be considered a resident. But what had triggered such a violent rage? What investigators uncovered next would change everything. A deep dive into Darrell Brown's criminal background revealed a troubling history. He had been arrested multiple times across different states. His charges included domestic battery, illegal possession of firearms, and parole violations. In fact, he had only recently been released from prison after serving a 2-year sentence. Family members would later say that Charletta likely had no idea about his full past. Darrell kept it to himself. He didn't have a phone, no social media, no job, and that made it far easier to hide who he really was. To fill the narrative gap, police turned to friends, colleagues, and church members. Interviews painted Darrell as private, angry, erratic. No one expected violence, but everyone confirmed he'd become increasingly moody in the days before the murders.
And some people say he was a little strange, he was a little different, but they said that about my sister too. She was quiet, she wasn't a social person. So just because you're quiet and you're a little different than everyone else doesn't mean that you're a murderer.
She felt he was very nice, very mannerable, but there was that certain little element she was afraid of.
A neighbor revealed police had responded to a noise complaint at the house just 4 nights earlier. The incident wasn't classified as domestic violence, but it raised alarms. And that growing concern would soon escalate into a full-scale manhunt. By the evening of March 13, authorities had obtained arrest warrants for 2 counts of first-degree murder and possession of a stolen firearm. The U.S. Marshals distributed surveillance photos of Darrell to every agent in Michigan and Illinois. A $25,000 reward was announced through the Marshals' Most Wanted list, and public alerts were issued across radio and social media. But what made it all more devastating was how it might have been prevented. Despite the chilling 911 call from Kiana, which clearly stated that her aunt had been killed and she feared she was next, the dispatcher categorized the call as a welfare check rather than an active emergency. When Grand Rapids officers arrived at the home on Sheldon Avenue, they reportedly knocked but received no answer. But there was one problem. No one went inside. Instead of forcing entry, officers left the scene.
911 call ended seconds later and the police response began. The Grand Rapids officers who arrived on scene that morning had no way of knowing their actions over the next few minutes would soon come under intense scrutiny.
It wasn't until hours later, after another 911 call from a concerned relative, that police returned, this time finding the bodies of Kiana and Charlotta. When the timeline of events became public, the Grand Rapids Police Department initiated an internal review. In an official statement, they admitted their protocols could have been more assertive, especially considering the content of the call. Community members criticized the handling of the situation, demanding reforms in how emergency calls are categorized and responded to. Days turned into weeks. Brown was believed to be hiding, possibly using aliases or local abandonments. Investigators canvassed known friends and former haunts. As time passed, the case became one of Michigan's most urgent hunts. A trusted house guest gone rogue with deadly consequences. But then, a single clue would surface. Tips began trickling in from across the Midwest and southern U.S. after Brown's addition to the U.S. Marshals Top 15 Most Wanted list in 2022. Someone in Columbus, Ohio believed they spotted him panhandling near a gas station. Another lead came from Memphis, Tennessee, where a man matching his description was seen leaving a local shelter. But Darrell Brown was always gone by the time authorities arrived. Investigators believe he was receiving help from acquaintances or possibly strangers unaware of his past. These near misses only intensified public frustration and law enforcement urgency. Even with Darrell Brown's face plastered across news channels and social media, he managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. The U.S. Marshals confirmed he had a history of transient living and was adept at slipping through bureaucratic cracks. News of the killing shook Grand Rapids. Candlelight vigils sprang up near the church that had once housed Darrell, as mourners wrestled with grief and fear. Charlotta was remembered as warm and generous, while Kiana's friends, classmates, and neighbors recalled her bright smile and dreams of working with children. Both were honored in a joint memorial at Fountain Street Church. Their caskets lay side by side, adorned with lavender and white flowers. Family members spoke of the deep bond between aunt and niece, how they worked, laughed, and leaned on each other through life's trials. A Sunday vigil outside the Sheldon Avenue home drew dozens of community members who left flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Kiana's sister addressed the crowd, tears in her eyes. The vigil soon became a platform for activism. Local leaders introduced proposals for Kiana's law, aimed at reforming how 911 calls involving domestic threats are prioritized and handled. The joint funeral service was held in Charlotta's longtime church, packed with mourners. Friends and family wore purple ribbons in honor of domestic violence awareness. The ceremony featured musical tributes, a reading from Kiana's 911 call, and an emotional eulogy from her brother. Determined not to let their deaths be in vain, the community signed petitions supporting Kiana's law and attended training sessions focused on recognizing abuse and improving emergency response. But tragedy will return, taking lives. In July 2020 at precisely 9:02 a.m., another 911 call sent emergency responders racing back to 553 Sheldon Avenue. Smoke poured from the upstairs windows. A fire had broken out in the same home where Kiana and Charlotta had been murdered just over a year earlier. Inside, firefighters found 65-year-old Jacqueline Baber Bay and her 5-year-old grandson, Amarion Cummings, unresponsive in a second-floor bedroom. Both died from smoke inhalation, unable to escape the blaze in time. Investigators determined the cause was lit candles. Part of a memorial vigil for Kiana and Charlotta had been left burning unattended, sparking a fire that consumed everything in its path. It was a heartbreaking and unintended consequence of the grief that continued to haunt the home. But the sorrow didn't end with the flames. It deepened the scars already left behind by Darrell's deadly actions, and with it came renewed calls for accountability, support, and healing for a family that had already endured more than most could bear. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Newly released documents in 2023 revealed that Brown had previously been arrested in Ohio for aggravated assault but was released due to a clerical error in processing his identity. The fact that someone with a violent history had been mistakenly set free enraged the public and reinforced the need for stronger interstate criminal databases. To date, Darrell Brown remains at large, despite intensive manhunts, surveillance footage, and a $25,000 reward. He has not been apprehended. Darrell Brown stands 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs approximately 180 pounds, and has black hair and brown eyes. Over the years, he's used multiple aliases, including J.J. Robinson, Michael Richardson, and Marcus Wright, names that may be familiar in different cities or circles. If you have seen him or have any information that might help locate him, you're urged to contact the Grand Rapids Police Department or the U.S. Marshals Service immediately. Even the smallest detail can help close this case and finally bring justice for Kiana and Charlotta. The U.S. Marshals and FBI continue to treat the case as active and high priority, but the justice Kiana never saw in life is beginning to take shape in legislation. By 2024, a version of Kiana's law was introduced in Michigan, aiming to mandate more aggressive responses to 911 calls where domestic violence or imminent harm is reported. The bill would also require follow-up visits if no contact is made initially. And eventually, what started as one family's grief evolved into a broader social reckoning. Community groups formed under Kiana's name now host workshops in churches and schools, helping women and families learn to recognize red flags and create safety plans. The Grand Rapids Police Department has revised its emergency response protocol, adding a new classification level for domestic urgency with potential fatality. But then we can't help but to ask, why wasn't Darrell Brown's history discovered sooner? How many more lives need to be lost before systems change? Kiana did everything right. She called for help, gave a clear location, and described the threat. But a failed system didn't respond fast enough.
What was so senseless about this and just a tragedy and injustice is to walk up just with no sense of urgency, no sense of importance. I mean, just took their time.
My daughter didn't say someone's trying to assault me. No one's trying to beat me up. She said someone is trying to.
It would have been East Grand Rapids, Forest Hills, or, you know, some other affluent area. They would have came with the whole cavalry. The house would have been surrounded, and they wouldn't have left until the owner came or till they found out who was in that home. They wouldn't have
and
left.
then at 1 o'clock or so, you get another call
And the
to
same
the
officers,
same house.
And the same
and you
officers
come here, now
back.
you got to bring my family out in body bags because you didn't care at 10 o'clock.
This case underscores a terrifying reality. Even when victims speak, institutions sometimes fail to act. But it also demonstrates the power of voices, of community, of activism, and of remembrance. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.